Good afternoon, and I'm going to do two different videos. One right before we solder this thing, which is where we are right now, and then well, probably be three videos. Then there'll be one where we solder it, and then we'll come back after we get it soldered and do the cement, and the patina. We'll probably do another one. So anyway, we'll divide this thing up into several different pieces so that people can get an idea of this process. There's some people that work in lead, a few. Pretty much, I guess, most people that are hobbyists or not that deep into this stuff don't mess with lead much, and they're generally always in copper foil. Lead work, somebody asked me, is it difficult? Geez, I have the same answer for everything about stained glass. None of it's difficult, but it's difficult to do it well. And I'll say that. So, you can throw something together and it's a piece of stained glass, but to get it to a higher level of craftsmanship takes a long time and a lot of dedication and determination. And so anyway, we've got this thing pretty well put together. The lead work went fairly well, and I got up into here and we did a little bit of piecework up in here. Boy, this thing got, and I'll tell you why it got so complicated right in here. I boxed myself into a corner here, which I was reasonably sure I was going to do. And by the way, that glass doesn't look like it matches this piece, but it does in the light. So anyway, and the reason I boxed myself into this corner and I didn't build this thing from here across was because I was trying so hard to book match this glass on this side and as it came across this particular sheet. And I'll show you that in just a second. So when I was cutting the glass on this side, and I do everything one piece at a time because I want these, super good fits like I have on this thing. So when I was across here, what we mean by book matching is, here's the sheet I'm working with. This is what's left of it. And it was actually a pretty good sized sheet when I started. And so I was working off the lower half of this sheet, and I was coming from left to right, which is what we're doing here, left to right. And you can see that the glass gets it to a creamier color over on this right side versus the left side. So what I'm trying to do, rather than just put a whole bunch of opalescent glass in this thing, this would have been real easy if I'd have just said, well, just start whacking out glass and put it in wherever the opalescent green is. That's what I do. I put opalescent green in. But because I wanted this thing to flow from top to bottom in the same color family from the same section of the sheet, then I went from the left side of the sheet across the bottom, got that in, and then we ran this strip of lead here across. Then we went to this section, and I laid in all this lower part here before I got to here because I knew this was going to be a hassle. And then I got up here and I thought, well, I'll just go ahead and build this upper section with all this curves and stuff in it from left to right all the way across. And then I thought to myself, well, you start laying these pieces down here and you're not going to get yourself book matched to this side. You need to, and what I'm talking about is I cut this piece here from the left side of this sheet over in here, and then I came right over at the same time and cut this one from the right side. So I'm going from the left side of the sheet to the right side, and I'm pairing these cuts up. I did this one, and then this one, and this one. And the reason I wanted to do that is I wanted to stay in this color from here up. And I felt like if I came on across here, I'd get lost into what I had put in here. So I thought, well, let's just do this. Let's go ahead and do this section and all of this flower. This section, all this flower. And I made a mistake there. We'll do this section and this section and then build the flower separately. So it did get a little tense right in here. And but you can see where I've brought all the lead lines in. We're reasonably close here with all of the glass matching up pretty well. By the time I put the solder on here, and I'll show you how you do that, get the solder in here and see, I've got this intersection here, so it matches up with that one. And then It did get a little wicked right in. Let's see, I think I was working these pieces in here. It got really rough trying to get them to fit just right because you needed the left side the same as right side. So see these little intersections here? I had planned actually to take this piece of lead here and go all the way up here. But that got real difficult trying to get all these pieces set and to stay in. So all I did was just come across here and cut the thing right here and set this one back in. When we solder this, there'll be no difference between this side and this side. I think that's the only thing that looks a little whacked out. Not any big deal. Here we're working. All this stuff here will be, anything that doesn't look exactly right will be hidden underneath the solder joints. So the next thing that remains here before we do the soldering, won't take me too long. I'm going to take a lunch. It's nearly 1 o'clock here. Take a short lunch break. I'm going to come back and steel wool this thing and clean it up real good. So that's a prerequisite for really good solder on lead is clean lead. And then let's see, what did I do with my tool here? Let me grab this little picker tool. Yeah, here's one. This is a handy tool right here. Right here, I've got these tiny little holes in the lead, and this lead here needs to be pulled over just a little bit there, and then this one needs to be pushed, see, because you want this to line up. That's the only thing I see that is not exactly perfect, and when I get the solder on there, it'll look perfect. And there's little holes here and there where I've moved the lead with this little tool. There's quite a few holes up in here where I'm pulling the lead down in to fit a certain place. Okay, so, next thing you do, I did cut the zinc. People are interested in all these different things. This is a little zinc saw. It's real old. I shouldn't say real old. These are actually more expensive than what you think they would be. I think maybe if I had it to do over again, they make a what I'd call a chop saw, or a saw that's got a blade on it and it chops down. This thing's a little bit dangerous. And and the blades on these get dull pretty quick. They don't last all that long. They're about $10 a piece, which is not that big a deal, but they don't last that long, and you seem to have a tendency to use them a little longer than what you should. And here just a few minutes ago, I was cutting some zinc, and I wear a pretty serious face shield. Not at my age, I don't want to lose anything. I mean, what I have is barely here to start with. And so I had a face shield on and everything, and I had an older blade, and it caught a piece of this zinc and shot that right at me. Fortunately, the face shield here helped me, and then I also had a pair of safety glasses on underneath that. So I'm telling you, eye protection is a big deal. I worked in industry for a lot of years, and I've seen people lose an eye in industry with, doesn't take but one mistake and you've lost an eye. So anyway, this thing is somewhat of a dangerous tool if you're not comfortable with its use. Anyway, that's how we cut the zinc, is with a special saw. That chop saw I'm talking about has the motor's on a carriage and it goes up and down. That I think would be safer than this. But I've had this a long time and I've used it, cut a lot of metal with that. So and then I use this little deal here. If I had here's a piece of zinc, and I just set this. All of these miter joints are mitered at a 45 in, and so you just take this tool here and set it on there and mark out your 45, and then I do that, mark that with a flare, Papermate, okay, and then I go over there, and you don't have to be any, wizard to follow that line. You can see the blade there and follow that line across there. You just have to really be careful with a saw like that. That thing will get you. All right, and then the next thing, we've got the zinc cut to fit, and any place that if it's off just a hair, I'll cover that with solder. Nobody will know the difference. Next thing you want to do is, I spend a lot of time on the drawings ahead of these windows and then in the construction of the windows, staying square, because straight lines are the mark of fine craftsmanship, the hallmark of fine craftsmanship. So if you have a piece like this thing that's got a lot of straight lines in it, you want those straight. And you can always spot somebody that's either, not pushing themselves to make a really good piece, or they're not experienced at it that much, or maybe I don't know why anybody would do this stuff if they didn't care. But you'll watch a line like here, and you'll look right here, and this one here will be crooked or be off a little bit. Well, that's just the whole piece thrown off right there. That's why I'm talking about a tiny little offset right here, and I'll pull that in as I get ready to solder it and make that thing straight. There is some consternation about why I did this. I started to make this go clear across, and the idea of this was to make this come up here and curve a little bit, although I didn't get maybe as much curve in as I wanted. After I solder this, this will actually look compatible with what we're trying to do here. What else? Vertical, horizontal lines, I talked about that. And this is all going to solder up and be a gorgeous window when we get done with it. Now, the next thing, I was talking about being square. So here's a nice big aluminum square. After I get, or before, I know I'm square here because I set this wood up in the beginning, this square piece of wood here, and I built this thing on this piece of zinc and this piece of zinc. So it was all built here. So if you're drawing, and that's why it's so imperative that your drawings be good. If your drawing is square, and you should go over your drawing 2 or 3 times before you start cutting glass, and make sure it's squared up. The distance from this side here to here needs to be the same from here to here. So check your drawings out. Okay, once the drawing is square, and you're set into a square frame, and you measure all that up, I set a square inside of that to make sure that's square. Then, with my, I don't know why I call it my method, but the way I'm building these things one at a time, that's how I stay so straight, is I cut these pieces one at a time. I can't remember how many millimeters this thing is across here. And I do everything in millimeters because it's so exact. That fractional stuff just drive you crazy. 5/16, 13/16, and all of the rest of that stuff. So what was that? These, I think I remember this was like 49 millimeters wide. And most all these came out 49 millimeters wide. And that's at the point right there when you take your measuring device and shove it into this zinc or not the zinc, but the lead on this side, and get a measurement across here. That's when you can go ahead and compensate for the heart of this lead, or that little slender bar that's down the center of that lead. So if it came up 49, then I'm going to go 48.5, which is easy enough to see on this thing. And that's where I'm going to put the mark on the glass, and then I'm going to strip that glass off that length and then fit that in there. I'm looking at that glass when I set it in, and I've got video of this stuff. I'm looking at that glass when I set that in there and looking, am I straight with that line that's running underneath here all the way? If I'm straight, then I can go ahead and now get the measurement and put the next one in. So that's how I'm getting these lines so straight and this whole piece so exact and the whole thing squared up. And there might be those that say, well, you don't need to be quite that, accurate with all this stuff. Well, actually, you really do, because if you're building a window that needs to be 16.25 by 16.25, it needs to be 16.25 by 16.25 because it's going to go into an opening or go into a frame. And if you're off, it just shows up in the work. So let's take a look at this. And so there we go. All right, now put that square right down there and look right on there. I hope you can see that is square there. Okay, that's one thing, but is it square this other direction? All right, so we'll go here, and now I don't know how well you can see this, but that square is touched right across there and right across there. We are super close, super close. So I'm thinking probably in the neighborhood of 1/4 of a millimeter or something, which is, I mean, probably like I think that would be close to about a 32nd of an inch. So when you get it down that close, you're close enough. So let me put this away. All right. So the next thing we're going to do, and here's I mentioned this before, and along the way as we've built this piece. Let me get this out of the way. Because this thing's on this piece of plywood, see, I was able to move this thing around, work over here, and then, oh man, did it really pay off when I'm up on this end trying to fight this, because this was no fun right here. This took some time here, and particularly you get glass that's got these weird curves on it going down to a point down here. That was not easy right in here. It would have been easier to build it, like I said, across this way, but I was afraid that I would get out of the color zone to book match these pieces right here. So I thought, well, I'll just pay my dues. And, you know, the more of this stuff you twist and fight with, I think sometimes the better off it makes you as a artisan, craftsman, whatever you want to call yourself. Okay, so I'm going to steel wool this thing here. That's no big deal. You could get there's a little monkey that's on YouTube or someplace. I see this guy all the time. Kiki, the little monkey. I believe you could train Kiki to do this. But, you know, I'm just going to clean this thing up and steel wool it. We'll get it steel wooled real good, and we'll come back a little bit later this afternoon, another hour and a half or so, and then we'll solder this thing up. And that's the key part of this that people want to see. So do I. I like that stuff too. And we'll get the soldering iron going. I'll show you the soldering iron, show you what flux I'm using. I always use 60-40 solder. I don't cut corners with the solder. So we're using 60-40 solder, and we'll solder this thing up. It'll go pretty quick. And this 3/16 lead, which is the narrow stuff, there we go. I'll show you that. What I do with it. Yeah, there's the 3/16, and this stuff looks like mammoth next to it. There's 1/4 right next to it. Now, you could have put this together with 1/4, but the problem with that is that these fine lines here are, you know, all taken up with lead. So this is a good piece for 3/16 lead. However, as I mentioned before, the 3/16 lead will make you cut your glass a lot tighter than you would cut it if you were doing 1/4, because there's only 2 millimeters underneath the edge of that cane for you to hide, or the edge of the glass is going to be. And we'll get right down on it. There's 2 millimeters right there. Well, I'm here to tell you, you're going to need to develop some glass skills to get 2 millimeter tolerance under there, and you can't really have that whole 2 millimeters, because if you're off nearly 2 millimeters, then you've got holes underneath the edge of this glass that are just about visible, and so that's not a good thing either. So anyway, I've given you on this particular window a lot of different tips on how one of these leaded pieces is built, and how you can get one built that has some integrity, and then the soldering should go real well. Well, anyway, I'll come back in a little while and we'll solder. Thank you so much, and I'm excited about soldering.